Hey, it's Webs here with day 6, 7. I actually don't know which day it is of the card reveal season for Murder at Castle Nathria. I actually waited to put out a video on this just because of the fact that we only had one card and we didn't have any information about the card that it actually works with. So let's just begin with the neutral cards. The first one being Red Herring, which is a 7-cost neutral minion with 3 attack, 12 HP. That is a beast with taunt, and your non-red herring minions have stealth. This is going to be a really good card in a evolve target. However, if you don't randomly generate this, I don't know how often you're going to want to run a card like this, though it does allow some aggro decks and some combo decks to protect their big important combo pieces for a turn. But it does cost a lot, which might make it a little bit worse of a card overall. I think Druid probably could use this a lot, depending if they want to protect some combo pieces that are minions on the board, but I can't think of any combo pieces right now that need to stick on the board that you would want to protect this with, as you can discount this with Celestial Alignment. And outside of that, and the fact that you can evolve into this pretty easily given one of the later cards, this card is probably just a alright card overall as a standalone, but in combination with a lot of other things, it could be really good in the future. The next card that got revealed is Insatiable Devourer, which is a 9-cost neutral minion with 4 attack, 4 HP, Battlecry, Devour an enemy minion and gain its stats, infuse 5, and its infused version looks like this. Overall, I think this card costs a little bit too much to actually see much play. If there's a way to actually discount the infused cards that hasn't actually been revealed yet, then maybe a card like this could see a lot of play. It is technically a on-board Mutanus, but I think Mutanus is just a lot better because you can steal things from your opponent's hand that they haven't actually played yet. This could be a nice comeback card for certain control classes, and it does have some potential, but I think the Infuse 5 is what's going to make this really hard to actually manage to get outside of some token generating decks, and I think you have better payoffs in those types of decks anyways, so you're probably not going to want to run this. If it cost a little bit less and had a little bit lower base stats, maybe it would be a lot playable, or if the infuse was a little bit lower than 5, it would be a lot more playable in my opinion. The next card revealed today was Disposed Soul, which is a 4-cost neutral minion with 4 attack, 5 HP, Battlecry. If you control a location, discover a copy of a card in your deck. This is basically a neutral version of Moonlit Guidance, which is a very good card in Druid. However, this does cost 4 instead of 2, which might make it a little less playable, along with the fact that we don't have any other ways to consistently generate additional copies of locations currently, which means this card is going to be offline most of the time if you are going to play in a deck with a location. If we do see an additional way to generate additional locations or additional copies of locations, I think this card will see a lot of play, but as it currently stands without seeing the rest of the set, I don't think this one will be consistent enough to see play. It's really cool to see a neutral version of Moonlit Guidance, but at the same time, it is a very hard condition to fulfill. And now for the card that actually will help prevent locations from being really powerful, Demolition Renovator, which is a 4-cost neutral minion with 4 attack, 4 HP, that has the Battlecry, destroy an enemy location. So this is just straight up location hate. That's actually going to be pretty good if there are a lot of location cards in the metagame. So week 1 or week 2, this is going to be a really strong card, but as people find out that not all of the locations are created equal, a card like this is probably going to run out of favor unless those that are really good do become such a meta relevant threat that you're going to want to run a card that is just dead. It's basically similar to the Viper, except it doesn't have tradable, and because of that, having a niche card that might be dead in a lot of matchups might not see that much play outside of tournament situations, unless all of the locations are actually going to be really powerful, but we've seen them all now, so I figure this is probably going to just be an average card at best. The next card is the card that I was talking about at the start of the video, Relic Vault. Relic Vault is a Demon Hunter location with 3 mana cost and 2 durability, and it makes the next relic you play this turn cast twice. So we had no information about what the relics actually were going to be, but given the fact that we do know that Zymox is the Demon Hunter suspect, I had assumed that it was going to be the 3 relics that he uses in his Castle Nathria fight, and I was correct on that. I wasn't really correct on what they would actually do, except for one of them, which is Relic of Phantasms, which is a 3-cost spell for Demon Hunter. Summon 2 1/1 spirits, improve your future relics. Now, these cards were actually leaked out accidentally, given the Hearthstone database on the main website, so we don't actually know exactly how these are going to actually improve, but I think it was supposed to improve from being a 1/1 to a 2/2 and 3/4, so on and so forth. At least that's what people are assuming with a card like this. It's a pretty alright card for like token Demon Hunter. However, I don't know if it's enough to be a standalone deck, especially given the fact that we haven't seen Zymox himself, and this is actually not that powerful of a effect on its standalone. It really depends on how this actually improves. The next relic that got revealed is Relic of Extinction, which is a 2-cost spell for Demon Hunter that deals 1 damage to a random enemy minion twice, improve your future relics. The issue with a lot of these relics is I don't know if any of these are going to be worth it to actually play within your deck. This is an alright removal tool, but there's just so many other good removal tools that Demon Hunter currently has that actually supports a really good deck right now, which is Fell Demon Hunter. And because of all of these relics not actually having any type of school of magic, especially because they aren't Fell, I don't know how much anyone is going to want to run any of these unless Zymox does something really insane and can actually make up for the fact that 2 out of the 3 relics aren't really the best things in the world. And finally, the last relic is Relic of Dimensions, which is a 5-cost Demon Hunter spell. Draw 2 cards and reduce their costs by 1, improve your future relics. Now this one's actually pretty good with the location card itself, as this would allow you to draw 4 and reduce the cost of whatever you're actually drawing into, depending on how many relics that you actually played. However, because the other relics aren't the best things in the world, and you probably aren't going to want to play them all unless, again, Zymox and some other cards support these cards, this is one of those things that is really sad, because Demon Hunter has so many really cool ideas for decks, but none of them actually do anything. It's either always going to be aggro Demon Hunter or Fell Demon Hunter. It would be really cool to see some additional support outside of those 2 decks, but sadly those seem to be the ones that always get pushed forward, as Big Demon Hunter really hasn't really done much at all, and additional ideas like Death Rattle Demon Hunter had its time in the sunlight, but then we got a bunch of new Fell support, and then it was bad again. It really just sucks that these cards I don't think are going to actually see much play. It would be cool to see this in Questline Demon Hunter, as that is another really neat deck. But again, unless we know what Zymox actually does, I don't know how consistent people are going to want to run all the relics in one deck. And even if they do, they might want to run cards that generate additional copies of relics instead of running every single relic themselves, because if you can get a lot of relics of dimensions, you're in a really good position. But outside of that, I don't know if the other 2 are worth playing at all. And now for Hunter's first card, which is Stonebound Gorgon, which is a 4-cost Hunter minion with 3 attack, 5 HP, rush, infuse 3, also damages the minions next to whoever this attacks. And then this is what the infused version looks like. The most frustrating part about a card like this is given the fact that this goes completely against the location spell for Hunter, as it is another Hunter beast target that has rush already, so really the improvement effect on the location does absolutely nothing for 90% of the beasts within Hunter. This is a really cool payoff though for token Hunter, which is a deck that I've been really trying to make work for quite a while. However, I don't know if this is going to be enough to do so, as it does have a small attack pool and is a nice little removal tool for a deck like that, but outside of that, it isn't the best card in the world. And now for the next Hunter card, which is Huntsman Altimor, which is a 7-cost Hunter legendary minion with 5 attack, 4 HP. Battlecry, summon a Gorgon companion, infuse 4, summon another, infuse 8, summon another. So more token hunter support, which is actually really cool to see. Again, I really want to make this deck work. It's a deck that I always try to make work and then I end up scrapping it because it just doesn't have as much potential as I would have liked right now. It doesn't really have a really good payoff. The Defias fish shooters or whatever they're called is a decent payoff for a deck like that, but it would be nice to see some additional support, and it looks like we are going to get some support within this set, and this is actually a pretty decent end game minion for a deck like this. And you can actually even combo this with Fran's Bronzebeard, so you can actually get 5 additional Gorgon companions instead. But if these are just random companions, then this might be a lot worse. The 3 companions are Morgor, Argast, and Hecatus. Morgor is probably the best out of the 3. Argast is decent, and then Hecatus is really just to help you save your own face, and the more Hecatus you actually generate, the more frustrating you are going to get with a card like this. You're always going to want to generate Morgor, but if you don't really have an option of which one you generate, then it really just depends. I think the infuse on this is a little bit too high also, much like some of the other big infuse cards. I don't think any of those will actually see much play for their last infuse, and that's really shitty to say, but it is what it is. I think they're being a little bit too cautious with the infuse, but without seeing the rest of the hunter cards, I don't know how consistent hunter is going to be able to token generate. And if there are some more token generating cards for hunter, then maybe that infuse cost of 8 is actually going to be incredibly easy to get. You never know. I do think infuse is probably going to be a mechanic that just does nothing in the end because it relies on you drawing into whatever cards that have infuse on it, unless it is a really low infuse cost. Now for the next card revealed, which is a return of a old favorite, Solid Alibi, which is a 2-cost frost spell for mage, and until the end of your next turn, your hero can only take 1 damage at a time. This effect is absolutely insane, especially for control style of decks for mage, and it actually is a really good target for questline mage overall. Sure, it doesn't actually do any damage to your opponent's face, but it does allow you to actually prevent yourself from actually dying in a given turn unless they have some card that does a bunch of 1 damage at a time. I do worry about a card like this in Wild, even though I don't actually play it, as I do know that the original quest for Mage is actually incredibly strong in that format. And with a card like this is basically Ice Block copies 3 and 4, and honestly isn't that bad of a card. Overall, I would say this card is probably have a huge potential in even standard, just given the fact that if you can make a control style deck work, this is just going to give you a few additional turns while you try to draw into some big AoE board clears or some other type of answers to deal with all your opponent's minions. I can't see a world where this actually does see much play, as it is just a powerful card. And now for the Shaman card, which is Convincing Disguise, which is a 1-cost Shaman spell that transforms a friendly minion into one that costs 2 more, infuse 4, transfer all friendly minions instead. It's really cool to actually notice, if you play World of Warcraft, the armor that he's actually using is the Night Fae leather set instead of the mail set, which is the disguise, I guess. Overall, I think this card is going to be incredibly powerful, given the fact that we have seen other evolve cards so far, and given that Red Herring is actually a really good 7-cost card to randomly generate off of tiny toys. And in combination of those 2 cards, I think this one will see a lot of play. Evolve Shaman is looking really, really good this expansion, and I can't wait for the return of it. Sure, it might be a little bit frustrating to play against, but it is always a fan favorite deck and is a lot of fun to play yourself if you actually don't get screwed by RNG. And now for the final location card, which is the Vile Library, which is a 2-cost location for Warlock with 2 durability. Give a friendly minion +1/+1, repeat for each imp you control. So it looks like Warlock is getting a imp style deck overall, and we'll see that with some of the other cards revealed which is actually a reference to Rafaam's old Rafaam scheme card from back in the day. Though I think these cards will do a lot more than a card like that did. And honestly, I don't think this condition is that hard to fulfill. You could just buff an imp up for absurd amounts because there are a lot of ways to generate imps in standard currently, which is actually pretty cool to see. I do think this is a little bit worrisome in theory if you can get like a big Mr. Smite on the board where you buff it up with all the imps. Though, given the fact that it looks like imps are going to be even easier to output, I think Death Rattle and Phylactery Warlock is probably just going to be a lot better now, given the fact they can run a bunch of additional imp generators that could easily be removed from the board. Though then again, given some of the other support, maybe just a full-fledged imp deck will actually make its way into the metagame. Either way, it's going to be cool. Zoo Warlock might actually see some play again. Now, for the next card is Frustrated Librarian, which is a 1-cost minion for Warlock with 1 attack, 3 HP, has +1 attack for each imp you control. This is just a decent 1-drop overall for imp Warlock. However, I don't know if this is going to be that good of a card. Sure, there are a bunch of imp generating cards, but on turn 2, you don't have that many cheap imps that I can actually think of. I know there's the one that does a little bit of damage to yourself whenever it actually attacks, but it really just depends on how easy you can get a bunch of imps. This could get really insane really quickly, but outside of some really edge cases, this is probably just a decent card overall and not too insane. I could be completely wrong with saying this. It could just get an absurd amount of attack really quickly, but it does give your opponent enough time to actually kill this before it does become a big threat. And now the next card is Mischievous Imp, which is a 4-cost demon for Warlock with 3 attack, 3 HP, infused, Battlecry, summon 2 copies of this, and then its regular version is infuse 3, summon 1 copy of this. Warlock doesn't actually really have too many ways to hand buff cards in them currently, though in theory you could run the Legionnaire from Alterac Valley to try to buff up cards like this in your hand. However, outside of that, this card probably has a lot of potential just because it does give you 3 imps really easily, and the infuse on this is actually incredibly easy to actually get, especially given the fact that imp decks are probably going to be very token based. Thus, you're going to be killing off a bunch of imps turn after turn, and this is probably a decent imp to replace the imps that actually die to empower it. I would honestly say the imp deck is actually shaping up pretty good, especially given the next card, which is Impending Catastrophe, which I was correct on guessing that Venthyr was going to be the Warlock Covenant. It is a 2-cost shadow spell for Warlock. Draw a card, repeat for each imp you control. This is going to be really insane with the Mithril Rod weapon, and the fact that you can just draw into most of your deck pretty quickly, at least 7 cards with just one of these. It's absolutely insane. It might actually revive questline Warlock, just given the fact that you can get into fatigue really quickly and can do a bunch of damage with the completed questline. And honestly, I can't see a world where this doesn't see play, even in decks don't run too many imps. It might actually force most Warlock decks to run a bunch of imps as long as you have enough space within them, and maybe will force Warlock towards a Renethil style of gameplay just so you can run a little imp package within your deck. And now for the huge payoff for all the imps. Rafaam, Imp King, which is a little bit disappointing. He isn't a 8-cost 7/7, but he is a 6-cost 6 HP 6 attack minion instead. With the Battlecry, resurrect 4 friendly imps, infuse 5, give your imps +2/+2. Overall, I think this is actually pretty decent. I do worry a little bit that this could allow your imps to get really big really quickly. However, most imps are all just 3/3s, which means this card in theory would give you what, 18 worth of stats on your board, which isn't actually that hard to deal with because they do have 3/3 stat lines if you don't actually get the infused off. If you can actually get the infused off, you're in a really good position. This is a really good card to combo out with Brand Bronzebeard, as you could in theory make your imp 7/7s, and your opponent's probably not going to be able to deal with that easily unless they have access to a AoE silence or AoE clear. I think this is a perfectly decent card as a big payoff for a imp style deck, and I'm looking forward to actually trying to make one of these decks work. I really love the token playstyle when it comes to decks, and I'm always looking forward to when they support those styles of decks, as they're always one of my more favorite types to actually play outside of really wacky combo decks. Okay, so those were all the cards revealed today. Let me know which ones you're looking most forward to using and what you're expecting out of the rest of the cards for the set. And like always, if you enjoyed the video, please do like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, bye bye.